The wind screamed through the snow-covered cliffs of Nervax 4, sharp and bitter like broken glass. Zeke Maddox pulled his coat tighter around his neck as the dropship landed with a thud behind him. He stepped into ankle-deep snow, his boots crunching loudly in the silence. All around him were white mountains, as tall as the sky, hiding dangers under their calm surface. "Great," Zeke muttered. "Welcome to the Galactic junkyard." This was not Earth. This wasn't even close. Nervax 4 was a frozen war zone light years from home. The Velar Dominion, an alien alliance of highly advanced species, had brought in humans, not as equals, but as backup. Desperate backup. Last resort. Disposable. Zeke had heard it all before he signed up. Humans are unpredictable. Messy. Illogical. That's why the Velar avoided working with Earth. Until the Hive War turned against them. Now humans were being dropped like spare parts onto alien battlefields. A group of tall Velar soldiers stood nearby. Their faces were pale and smooth, their eyes glowing with faint blue light. They didn't even look at him as he passed. Just more cannon fodder to them. Zeke tightened his gloves and walked forward, following a flickering holo sign that read, "Base Camp 17B. His breath fogged in front of him. His stomach growled. He was cold, tired, and already regretting everything. At the edge of the camp, a large metal crate opened with a hiss. Inside was a massive creature, part wolf, part machine, with steel plating over its shoulders and glowing eyes. It stared at Zeke with a low growl rumbling from its throat. "Whoa, easy there, buddy," Zeke said, stepping back. A Velar officer approached, her voice flat and sharp. "This is your war beast. It is programmed to obey. Its name is Rucka." "War beast?" Zeke blinked. "You're giving me a dog?" "Not a dog," the officer snapped. "A bioengineered combat unit." Zeke looked at Rucka again. The beast tilted its head, and then to his surprise its tail gave a small wag. He smiled. "Looks like he's more dog than you'd like to admit." The officer ignored him and turned away. Zeke crouched in front of Rucka, careful not to move too fast. "Hey, big guy. Looks like it's you and me now." Rucka stepped forward and sniffed Zeke's glove. Then, without warning, he sat down in the snow beside him, eyes watching the mountains. That night, Zeke sat by a small heater in his half-buried snow shelter, the wind still howling outside. Rucka lay beside him, his large body warming the cramped space. Zeke glanced at the stars through a small opening in the roof. "They don't think much of us, huh?" he whispered. Rucka gave a soft grunt in reply. Zeke chuckled. "Let's prove them wrong." And with that promise, man and war beast settled in for the long, frozen fight ahead. Two unwanted pieces on a chessboard that would soon flip the entire game. The morning came with no sun, just a gray sky and falling snow. Zeke Maddox stepped out of his snow shelter, wrapping his scarf around his mouth. The cold bit through his jacket like it had teeth. Rucka padded beside him, his heavy paws leaving deep prints in the fresh snow. The base was a mess of metal huts and half-buried machines. Aliens in silver armor moved with cold precision. They didn't speak to the humans. They didn't even make eye contact. Zeke was used to it now. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to survive. Formation in 30 minutes. A Velar commander barked in a robotic voice over the loudspeaker. "All units prepare for recon." Zeke sighed. Another death march. He loaded his gear, checked his small toolkit, and strapped a blaster to his belt. Rucka stood still as Zeke fastened a scanner pod to his back. The beast didn't flinch. He was trained like a machine, but Zeke knew better. Behind those glowing eyes was something more. "Don't worry, buddy. I've got your back," Zeke said. Rucka let out a soft growl and nudged Zeke's hand with his head. It was the closest thing to affection Zeke had seen since arriving. The recon team gathered at the edge of a frozen valley. Alien officers pointed to a ridge in the distance, explaining the route with glowing maps. "You are to locate and disable any Draxian mines," one said. "If you trigger one, your loss will be recorded." Zeke narrowed his eyes. How thoughtful. The team moved out. Snow crunched under boots and claws. The wind screamed louder now, like it was trying to warn them. Zeke stayed low, watching the scanners. Ruckus stayed just ahead, his senses sharp. Halfway up the ridge, the scream rang out. A soldier vanished in a flash of light, gone in an instant. A mine. "Get down," Zeke shouted. The team dropped. Chaos exploded. Rucka growled and ran forward, ignoring orders. Zeke chased after him. More mines went off, one too close. Zeke hit the ground hard, ears ringing. Through the smoke, Zeke saw it. A Draxian sniper, half hidden in the snow. Rucka had spotted him first. The beast charged, dodging blasts. He leaped through the air and knocked the enemy flat. "Rucka, no." Zeke ran to help, but the fight was already over. The Draxian was dead. Rucka stood over him, blood on his armor, steam rising from his body in the freezing air. Velar soldiers arrived, their eyes wide. One said coldly, "The human's beast neutralized the threat." Zeke knelt beside Rucka and patted his neck. "You saved lives today." But the aliens didn't cheer. They didn't thank him. They simply turned away. Later, back at base, Zeke cleaned Rucka's armor by hand. He didn't care if no one noticed. He noticed. "You're not just a weapon," he whispered. "You're my partner." And for the first time, Rucka gave a deep, soft huff, as if he understood every word. Snow kept falling on Nervax 4, covering the war like a quiet blanket. But underneath, trouble was boiling. Zeke Maddox leaned over a frozen map table, his fingers tracing the enemy supply route carved into the side of a mountain. His eyes burned from sleepless nights. "This is madness," whispered one of the human soldiers beside him. "They want us to walk straight into a trap." Zeke didn't answer right away. He looked outside the tent. The wind howled across the cliffs like a wounded beast. Somewhere out there, Draxian troops were waiting, and Velar Command wanted humans to lead the charge, again. "We're not scouts," Zeke said finally. "We're bait." The others nodded. They all knew it. Velar officers gave the humans a new mission: march through Icebreaker Pass and draw fire. If they survived, they were to disable a supply node. If not, no big loss. Back in his shelter, Zeke studied the mountain ridge for hours. He didn't want to follow orders. He wanted to beat them. That night, by the light of a single lantern, he scribbled a new plan on the back of a food wrapper. He called it Avalanche Protocol. The next day, under a pale sky, Zeke's team climbed the ridge. Snow crunched under their boots. Rucka led the way, nose to the wind, always alert. Velar drones buzzed above, watching silently. As the group reached the halfway mark, Zeke gave a signal. The team stopped. He pulled out a remote with a blinking red light. "Here we go," he muttered. Beneath the ridge, Zeke had planted several homemade charges the night before, using salvage equipment and old fuel cells. They weren't powerful alone, but placed just right on the icy cliffs, they could shake the whole mountain. He pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground rumbled. A low, thunderous roar filled the valley. Snow cracked and shifted. The ridge above them collapsed. A wall of white fury came crashing down the slope, right onto the Draxian convoy waiting below. Trucks, weapons, and soldiers vanished under tons of snow and ice. Cheers broke out among the humans. Even Rucka barked, tail wagging. But when Velar Command got the report, they weren't happy. In the command tent, Zeke stood before the Velar officers. Their faces were unreadable. "You disobeyed orders," one of them said. "I saved lives," Zeke replied, "and destroyed an enemy convoy. You are not authorized to lead independent action." Zeke stepped forward, calm but firm. Maybe that's the problem. Before they could respond, a new figure entered the room. She was tall, with silver-blue skin and glowing violet eyes. A Velar intelligence officer. "I am Selzane," she said. "This human, this Maddox, interests me." The other officers fell silent. Zeke blinked. Thanks." Selzane smiled slightly. "You might be chaotic, but perhaps useful." And just like that, Zeke went from troublemaker to a curiosity worth watching. As he left the tent, Rucka waited outside. Zeke gave his fur a scratch. Looks like we're not out of the cold yet. The war was changing, and Zeke had just rewritten his first rule. Snowflakes fell slowly, like ashes from the sky. The battle at Icebreaker Pass had shaken the mountains. Now whispers spread through the base about Zeke Maddox, the human who caused an avalanche and won a fight without following orders. Some called him reckless. Others called him lucky. But Sail-Zin, the Velar intelligence officer, saw something else. She had started watching Zeke closely. This one doesn't follow lines, she told her report drone. He draws new ones. Zeke, however, wasn't trying to be a hero. He just wanted to stay alive and keep his team breathing. Late one night, Sail-Zin summoned Zeke to a private briefing. The tent was lit with blue light, maps hovering in the air. There is something hidden in the northern cliffs, she said. The Draxians avoid it. Even Velar sensors fail there. Sounds like a great vacation spot, Zeke muttered. I want you to find out what's there, she continued. Take only those you trust. This mission is off record. Zeke looked at her. Why me? You are unpredictable, she said. Like the snow. The Draxians won't expect your path. 3 days later, Zeke, Rucka, and 4 human soldiers climbed into the untouched north. The wind was fierce, the trail narrow. Cliffs rose like broken teeth. There were no signs of war, only silence. Feels wrong, one soldier whispered. I agree, Zeke said, his voice low. Eyes open. At the top of a frozen ridge, they'd found it. A giant crack in the ice, almost invisible from the air. Rucka growled softly. Zeke stepped closer. Let's take a look. They followed the crack into a cave. The ice inside shimmered like glass. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, nothing like Draxian or Velar writing. Deeper inside, they found a buried room made of metal, glowing faintly under the frost. Inside it were machines, ancient, dusty, but still humming softly. What is this? One of the team asked. Zeke stared at the largest device. It looked like a ring covered in alien circuits and broken wires. I think it's a gate, he whispered. Gate to what? Zeke didn't know. But something in his gut told him this tech was old, older than the war, older than any species fighting in it now. Suddenly, the ground shook. Alarms flashed red. The cave began to crack. Move. It's collapsing, Zeke shouted. They ran. Ice crashed behind them. Zeke barely made it out, pulling one of his teammates to safety. Rucka leaped from the cave just as the entrance sealed shut with falling snow and stone. Breathing hard, Zeke turned and looked back. The mountain was quiet again, like nothing had happened. But he knew what he saw. Back at base, Zeke handed a small shard of alien metal to Sail-Zin. There's something buried out there, something powerful. She studied it closely. Then we must dig deeper. Zeke looked toward the distant cliffs. Or we let sleeping ghosts stay buried. But neither of them believed that was an option. Because whatever they had found wasn't done watching. Zeke Maddox sat alone in the repair tent, surrounded by wires, tools, and half-working parts. Outside, snow fell thick and steady, covering the world in white silence. Rucka rested near the entrance, his eyes glowing dimly, watching for danger even in the calm. Zeke held the alien shard they had recovered from the hidden cave. It was cold to the touch, but pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat trapped inside metal. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a connection to it, like it was calling to something inside him. The flap of the tent opened. Sail-Zin entered, her tall figure wrapped in a silver cloak that shimmered like ice under moonlight. Her glowing violet eyes met his. You're still awake, she said softly. Zeke looked up. Couldn't sleep. Too much noise in my head. She walked closer, her steps silent. The metal. Did it speak to you? Zeke raised an eyebrow. What do you mean, speak? Sail-Zin sat across from him, folding her long legs gracefully. Velar have long believed that some ancient tech has a memory. It remembers the ones who touch it. It learns. Zeke stared at the shard in his palm. Then I guess it just met a human. There was a pause. A soft warmth spread in the coal tent. You're different, she said. Most humans we observed during battle were afraid. You're chaotic. You joke in danger. You disobey orders, yet you win. I don't fight by their rules, Zeke replied, because their rules don't care if we live or die. She tilted her head. Your logic is emotional. Zeke chuckled. And yours is cold. They'd stared at each other. The snow hissed against the tent walls. Why are you really here, Selzin? He asked. She hesitated, then looked down. Because I was ordered to watch you, and because I chose to understand you. Zeke softened. He had never seen a Veller show anything close to doubt or emotion. But here she was, a powerful alien commander, sitting in his tent, speaking like someone unsure of her own place. He leaned forward, his voice quieter. I don't care what the others think. I just want to end this war. And if you're serious about understanding humans, start by trusting one. She looked at him, her eyes deep and glowing. Then she reached out and touched the shard in his hand. A jolt of light flashed between them. Their minds brushed. Images, feelings, thoughts shared in a single heartbeat. Zeke saw stars, fear, and deep loneliness. Selzin saw fire, hope, and Rucka. They both gasped and pulled away. What was that? Zeke whispered. Connection, she said. Rare and dangerous. He smiled, despite the chill running down his back. Welcome to being human. As Selzin stood and left the tent, Zeke stared at the shard once more. Something was changing, not just in the war, but between him and the alien who now walked beside him in the snow. Velvet and ice were starting to melt. The mountain winds were quiet that morning, but Zeke Maddox knew it wouldn't last. Nothing on Nervax 4 ever stayed peaceful for long. He adjusted the straps on his snow gear and checked the scanner on his wrist. The team was moving through an old supply route near the edge of a frozen valley. The air was thin, the silence thick. Rucka walked beside him, alert as always. Selzin followed behind, silent but watchful, her eyes scanning the icy ridges above. This area was supposed to be clear, Zeke muttered. Clear doesn't mean safe, Selzin replied calmly. Suddenly, Rucka stopped. His ears twitched. He gave a low growl and crouched low, muscles tense. Zeke raised his hand. Hold. The team froze. A second later, the ice exploded. Draction fighters burst from the snow like shadows, weapons firing. Blasts lit the valley in flashes of red and blue. Cover. Zeke shouted, diving behind a frozen rock. Rucka charged with a snarl, knocking a Draction soldier flat before he could react. The beast moved like lightning, biting, clawing, protecting. But then, an energy blast hit Rucka hard in the side. The war beast yelped and rolled across the snow. Rucka. Zeke ran toward him, heart pounding. More blasts rained down. Selzin stepped forward, her shield flickering around her. She fired sharp beams of light at the enemy, her face focused and fierce. Zeke reached Rucka, kneeling beside him. The beast was breathing, but barely. Smoke rose from a blackened spot on his side. Circuits sparked. Blood mixed with oil. You're okay, big guy. Stay with me, Zeke whispered, panic in his voice. The others held the Dractions back while Zeke opened Rucka's armor plate. Inside, wires were damaged and part of his core was exposed. Zeke's hands moved fast. He used his toolkit to reroute energy from Rucka's shoulder circuit to his main processor. It was risky. One wrong wire could shut him down forever. Selzin crouched beside him. Can you fix him? I don't know, Zeke said, sweat freezing on his brow. But I'm not giving up. He connected the last wire and held his breath. Rucka's body twitched. Then with a loud growl, the beast lifted his head. His eyes lit up again, bright and wild. Zeke let out a breath. You stubborn dog. Rucka stood, limping slightly, and returned to the fight with a roar. Together, Zeke, Rucka, and Selzin drove the Dractions back. The snow was stained with heat and light, but the team stood victorious. Later at camp, Zeke cleaned Rucka's wound while Salzin watched silently. "You risked your life," she said softly. "For an animal." Zeke looked up. "He's not just an animal. He's family." Salzin didn't respond. Instead, she knelt beside Rucka and placed her hand gently on his head. To Zeke's surprise, Rucka let her. For a moment, the three of them sat together in silence, man, alien, and war beast, bound not by orders, but by trust. And in that quiet space, something stronger than strategy began to grow. The valley of Shiverglass Hollow looked calm, wrapped in thick white snow, but Zeke Maddox didn't trust it. The mountains around them were too quiet, the sky too pale. It felt like the world was holding its breath. The human squad moved carefully through the narrow pass. Rucka walked in front, sniffing the air, his body tense. Salzin hovered at the back, her scanner glowing faintly. Zeke checked his wrist monitor. No movement, no signals, but it still feels wrong. Just then, the snow began to fall faster. But it wasn't normal snow. Zeke reached out his hand and caught a flake. It sizzled on his glove, melting through the fabric. "Everyone stop," he shouted. Too late. The sky above them had turned red. "What is this?" someone yelled. "It's not snow," Zeke shouted. "It's a chemical." The Draxians had released a new weapon, a bioacid that looked like snow but burned anything it touched. One soldier screamed as his gear melted. The skin on his arm was already red and blistering. "Cover up. Use thermal shields," Salzin ordered. Zeke grabbed a blanket from his pack and tossed it over a wounded teammate. The snow hissed and burned as it hit the cloth. They had to move fast. "This way." Zeke pointed to a rocky outcrop. "Rucka, lead us through." The war beast ran, his large body clearing a path through the acid snow. Zeke and the others followed, jumping over rocks, dodging blasts from above. The Draxians were attacking from hidden cliffs, using the snowstorm as cover. But Zeke had an idea. "Salzin, can you access the old mining pipes under the valley?" She nodded, fingers flying over her scanner. "Yes, they're unstable." "Why?" "I'm going to make them explode." He pulled a bundle of hacked Draxian grenades from his coat. While the others fought to survive, Zeke ran to the edge of the cliff and threw the explosives into the pipe vents. Then he ran. The ground shook. A massive rumble echoed across the valley. Boom. The explosion sent heat through the snow, melting it instantly and turning the red flakes into steam. The ground softened into thick, sticky mud. The Draxians lost their footing. Their weapons jammed. Their ambush failed. Human and Velar soldiers took advantage, pushing forward. Rucka leaped into the chaos, barking and biting, clearing the path. When it was over, the valley was quiet again, this time for real. Zeke looked around at the muddy battlefield. Steam rose from the ground like smoke from a fire. The enemy had been driven back. The team was safe, for now. "You rewired their attack," Salzin said, walking up beside him. "Humans are good at rewiring things," Zeke replied with a tired smile. She nodded slowly. "You saved more lives today than most generals in this war." Zeke didn't answer right away. He looked at his team, worn but alive. Then at Rucka, bruised but standing tall. "We're not generals," he said. "We're survivors, and we fight smart." In the blood-colored snow, that truth had become clear. The camp was quiet, but tension hummed thick in the air like heavy fog. Zeke Maddox sat beside a dim heater, rubbing his cold hands together. Rucka lay nearby, his eyes half closed but alert. Salzin stood at the entrance of the tent, her arms crossed. Her violet eyes were sharper than ever, but there was something tired behind them. Suddenly, the flap snapped open. Velar soldiers rushed in, their armor gleaming under harsh lights. "You are under arrest," one officer said coldly, pointing at Salzin. Zeke stood quickly, confusion flashing in his eyes. "What's going on?" "You have disobeyed direct orders," the officer said. "You are both traitors." Selzin didn't resist. She looked at Zeke with a mixture of apology and resolve. "They want to erase us," she said quietly. Zeke felt a cold knot twist in his stomach. After all they had fought for, after the risks, the victories, the Velar High Command had turned against them. "They're afraid," Zeke said, eyes blazing. "Afraid of what we're becoming." The soldiers dragged Selzin away, but Zeke grabbed her arm. "Wait. I'm coming with you." The officer sneered. "You're lucky we don't lock you up too." Zeke wasn't about to wait for orders. He turned to the small group of humans and Velar defectors gathered nearby. "They want to crush us," he said. "But we're not done fighting." A spark ignited in the eyes of his comrades. "We're the misfits of Mount Carix now," Zeke declared. "Not official, not welcome, but we're alive and we're dangerous." They packed quickly, salvaging what weapons and supplies they could. Rucka growled low, sensing the weight of what was happening. As they slipped into the cold night, Zeke felt a bitter taste of betrayal, but also a fierce fire burning inside. "We fight for ourselves now," he said. "For freedom. For survival." Days passed as the misfits moved through hidden mountain paths, avoiding patrols and ambushes. Selzin led them with precise strategy, her knowledge of Velar tactics proving vital. Zeke and Selzin clashed often, their opinions sharp and their emotions sharper. Yet, beneath the tension, a growing bond connected them. One evening, beneath the shimmering auroras, Zeke finally broke the silence. "Why did you risk everything for me?" Selzin looked at him, her eyes soft. "Because I see more in you than just a soldier. I see hope." They smiled, a moment of warmth in a frozen war. But their fight was far from over. Enemy forces tightened their grip on the mountain passes. The Draxians hunted them like ghosts. In the shadows, Zeke studied the old maps again. "We'll use their fear against them." With Selzin and Rucka by his side, the misfits prepared to strike back, not as tools, but as warriors writing their own fate. The war had branded them traitors. But to Zeke Maddox that meant one thing. They were free.